Welcome to yet again another industrially equipping video, which we are having today at Southern Savannah. Today we're in Sunny Rock, Edenville, Johannesburg, with the CEO and founder of a company called Horizon Dynamics, which has other subdivisions. But the main thing they do is metal fabrication for many parts. They make HVAC ducting. If you've seen that, those that you see in hospitals or malls, you see those big ventilation ducts. They make that. They make trailers. They do all sorts of metal fabrications, as you're going to see in this video, and as we have conversations with him. Now, the machine you see right in front of us, that's called a metal plasma cutter. We call it a CNC plasma cutter because you can make your design in the computer of the metal plate sizes that you want. And you're looking at any metal here. You're looking at galvanized steel, mild steel, all the way up to 16, even 50 mil thickness, just depending on the amperage or the power supply of your plasma cutter. Many of you will know a laser cutter, which in a sense does the same thing, but with a bit more preciseness. Now, from metal cutting to size, as you can see, that's been done here on this galvanized steel sheet. So you're going to see that we're going to come to the next thing, which is called a brake press, which basically bends your metal to the shape that you basically want to give you your L brackets and your corners and stuff like that. Right. After you bend your metal, right? You've taken it to the shape that you want. You've put a corner on it, and you didn't want to make a weld with two pieces. You just wanted to bend them into the shape you want, as you can now see. Um, you're going to have different finished products that you have. You have these, which are ventilation shafts. As you can see, they are ducts that have been made, and you see these all around you. Now you get to see how that stuff is made. Isn't that fascinating? Um, so this is basically what we do here. You see, he has another department on the side, which is not another, it's just in addition to what he has, where you have milling machines that make the through the holes that you need to put your threads and whatever you want to put on whatever parts you would have cut. You have welding. You have this that is a hearse that you basically use on those the funeral ones that people use. They make them in-house. You see the metal has been bent on the side there, and then the welds have been made. And after the welds are made, so that's from your cutting, you bend your metal, you weld it, and you have a fully formed. I hope as I'm speaking, you will see a description of the finished product of what it looks like. If not, we'll attach that in the description below. And next to that, you see that they're also doing welding. And the one that they have right now, which is showing in the video, that is where they're doing the basically they are taking metal bars and they're shaping them or bending them basically. And as you can see now, you see you get the angle that you want. After you get the angle that you want, you simply roll your material through. You can see in this factory, we have ladies working, we have men working. Mr. Koza really prides in getting everyone to be equipped in being an industrialist here in South Africa. So he's really involved in participating and making sure that everybody plays a part in building the nation's economy. And that's a basic metal bending machine. You can see that as the metal is bent, you can see that it now has a different shape. And these are things that are done. You also have a lathe. A lathe machine, basically what you're doing here is you're looking at your cylindrical surfaces, right? This is not CNC, it's basically what we call NC or manual lathe, where you're going to run it and there's a motor running, and then you can shape whatever you have. You're looking at your screws, you're looking at all of the metal bars that you use for feet and stuff like that, your bearings, more of that. We're going to have a specific video on that. But today we're just showing you the capabilities that you have. This machine that you see here basically does it to metal sheets. It can bend them and shape them into whatever form you want. You saw what it did with the metal bars. You're doing the same here, but with metal sheets, where you feed them, give them an angle, and you can bend your metal sheets, not just like a corner bracket. Let's get right into it.
So as you see, all of this is happening in Africa, and to be more specific, in South Africa, we're able to do all of this metal fabrication from cutting to bending to welding to even powder coating under one roof, and this is done by Africans and for Africa. Now we're going to go through an in-depth interview where we just talk about the ins and outs of this business, but I hope you are excited and fired up about us being able to build our own industry as Africans and not just having to buy things from outside that actually are things we can manufacture locally and boost our own local economy. Right, great. Let's move on. Because we've known each other for what now? 3 years?
Yeah, just over 3 years.
Just over 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. In this conversation, we just want to walk the regular African or any aspiring industrial African to give them light as to what does it take to get to where you are and even further. What is the platform look like? What is the market look like? What is the business look like? So that we can give them not just motivation but this the real insight as to what does it take to participate in the kind of industry. So I'll start with this. Maybe you can give us maybe the backstory of how did we get here, and in that the particular time that it actually reached that day, I can actually do this.
Yeah, so I think we got here out of the need that was born out of what we were doing. So historically, or when we started the business, we used to just provide services. Alright. So what we did is we provided air conditioning services. So typically what would happen is we'd get a company that's looking for air conditioning services, and we would go and procure obviously the air conditioners and all the accessories that are required to complete an installation. But what we picked up in the course of doing business was that most of the installation accessories were produced locally by a certain class of people. And I'm saying a certain class of people in the sense that these are people that have, for the longest of time, been historically doing the business. So it moved from grandfather to grandchild, from grandchild to whoever is coming after. So we then said and said, look, one, we are disadvantaged in terms of pricing.
And who's we in this regard?
We in the sense of, I'm talking about us as a business and also us as a people, particularly people who are historically disadvantaged. Right? So we are gunning for a bigger market.
Right.
We don't just want to do your typical tenders, if you will. And now we're saying we're moving into a space where pricing is a big factor.
Okay.
Secondly, your turnaround time. You must be able to do it within a given time frame.
Right.
For instance, if someone is building a mall, they need to do it for it to be commercially viable for them. They need to start and finish at a certain time. So we found ourselves in situations where we weren't able to deliver on time. And I think one of the reasons was that we could not get reliable suppliers. So people that would manufacture on our behalf. So they would have their A-listed customers and would come in when they don't have any work to do, or would be given longer lead time. So we looked at the landscape and we said to ourselves, we've got the know-how, at least the little that we had at the time. We had people that we knew that we could collaborate with in terms of understanding what it takes to put up a workshop that we have today, that in all honesty is not where we want to get to. This for us is just the foundation phase. There's a lot that we want to do, but as they say, a journey of 1,000 steps or miles, right, starts with the first step. So I think we've taken the first step. And what it took for us in terms of time frame, the company has been in existence for over 10 years. But I think the manufacturing side of the business has been in existence for about 2 years now. And in the 2 years, we've evolved from just doing ducting related to what we were doing as an air conditioning business to now focusing on fabrication, which is looking at the metal industry in its entirety. So we've had to rope in a lot of people in terms of skills. South Africa has a scarcity of skills in manufacturing. So what we're doing is, unfortunately or fortunately for us, is we've got people who understand the vision. What we have to do is invest a great deal in training our own people. We are also bringing in people who have the necessary skills, but are working for industries where they feel that they need a fresh start and they want to work for people. And that's basically it. So we've evolved as a business. We started as a services only business. We're in manufacturing now. We're looking at a broader scope of services that we can offer in manufacturing. And this has been our journey, as I said. I mean, it's a journey that took 10 years. And where we are now, we've got plans. We're currently negotiating a deal where we're looking to move to bigger space, because some of the products that we want to venture into require space. You require to have overhead cranes. There's a certain type of capital also that's required. So it's resources in terms of money, resources in terms of infrastructure, resources in terms of the labor that is required. So we're building up towards that greater vision.
So I'm looking at it from the time that we met. You were in a much smaller place.
Sure.
And from then, you've moved twice already. Yes, space of 2-3 years. Yeah. And in that whole space, I'm sure, I'm actually picking it now that the moment you started manufacturing, it's almost as if you started realizing that your dreams were very small. Like, it's every client that came, there was, the more you produced for that, for those clients, started realizing how much more space you need, how many more machines you need, and you sort of realize that scaling up was not something you had to postpone to 10 years later. Like it's almost as if the business wanted to grow on its own. It's not something you had to sit down and say, I want to grow, but the business, the market kind of forced you to grow. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's organic, right? So we started when we started. Our idea was that we'll do X amount of whatever product that we were producing. Like for instance, the business that we are in now, we will manufacture trailers for funeral parlors.
Yes.
It's a huge market. We're at a point where we have more orders than we can produce.
Yes.
And as a result, we are required to get a bigger space. Right? With that, we need to be able to train people. We need to scale the business. So it's organic. We started with what we wanted to do. For instance, the trailer business is one facet of the business. There's just other areas of fabrication that we're looking into, getting into. There's issues of compliance that we had to deal with, right? That we are also currently dealing with. So we want to make sure that we can compete in terms of products. Also, the products that we produce are of a certain caliber, right, or quality. So that's what we're working hard towards. Scalability is one thing that we find ourselves having to push harder for, and it wasn't in the plans. Our plans was that we would do what we did, got to where we are, and then maybe we had a year or two before we could move on to the next level. But it's a business that's evolving, as I'm saying. There are just too many opportunities for us that we are seeing, and our hope through some of these conversations that we are having, and other conversations that we are having outside of this forum, is that the cake is big, and we are looking for more people that can partake. And for them to partake is they want somebody who's been in the game for quite some time. Unfortunately for us, I mean, our relationship is one that has benefited us a lot because of the experience that you've had. I believe that we were able to exchange ideas, we're able to see where we were and where we can get some of these ideas into tangible things.
Yeah. Turning them into
actual products, yeah.
That's very good. Now, I like what you said. You said that the cake is big. In my understanding, when you get into this market, would you say there is massive competition? And who is this competition, if you have it? Maybe not by names, but in terms of, would you say that you get into a market where when you market your product, you're looking at someone else who's beating the price and it's hundreds of them around you?
And look, I think the benefits or the advantage rather that I see in the space we're in is that there is competition granted, but you can only do so many things in one day. And a lot of clients are now relying on bringing whatever goods they need from outside of South Africa, they're able to bring them in. Because the guys that are in the market can't produce them fast enough. Right? So if you are bringing something in from Asia, it will take about 8 weeks. So the advantage that we then get is the ability to be able to do things quicker than the next guy. The ability to be able to do things quicker by virtue of the fact that the stuff has to sit on water. If it's a big piece of equipment, you can't fly it in. It has to go via sea. So there is competition granted, but what I've noticed is that the cake is big enough for new entrants into the market, provided that the products that they are manufacturing are of the same quality. And also pricing is not a big factor because the margins are healthy. And what I have seen over time is that people are prepared to spend provided that they get a product of a certain quality.
I have seen that in the average African's mindset, when they think of stuff, I mean, you used to work with someone,
Yeah.
the moment most of us as Africans, when we think of doing our own business, it's only buy and sell. Immediately it's okay, let me go to, now there's selling test. But people, let me go to trade, let me buy clothes, let me sell, which is fine, but I'm saying that in the value addition space, especially in the manufacturing industry, there hasn't been a lot of people who are locally participating like you're talking about. So now I'm coming from the angle where I'm an African and I'm deciding to look, I want to, wherever I am in Africa, I want to participate in my nation's industry. We saw about 8, 9 so many machines out there, right? Now, what can I look at as I want to start, and what would be my challenge? Do I get something that just cuts metal? Do I get something that welds? And even in that regard, how can you assist me in the case that maybe I want to outsource from you? Maybe I have clients who want to make some metal structures, whatever it is, gates. Can I come to you and say, hey, look, this is what I have? Is that something you can help?
Certainly, I think one, look, for a product to go, there has to be demand, right? So you have to create the market. That's first thing first. I don't think I would encourage somebody who's new into the market to just start by buying machinery. Okay? Because once you have the machine, I mean, there's a big cost outlay that has to be done for you to be able to start competing. To commission some of these machines takes a lot of money.
School fees, you said.
The school fees, the maintenance that comes with as part of the school fees. What I have seen our counterparts do, and I'm being
let's talk, yeah.
is that there is a lot of collaboration. Right? So the biggest companies that are in the area where we are look big from the outside, but what they do is there's a lot of components that they outsource amongst themselves to make up for the bigger. So, for instance, if there's a company that produces yellow machines and they're looking for these buckets that they use, I've seen that there's a merchant who buys steel from the next like in town, and then sells that at a certain price. What I have seen the bigger companies do is they've got an advantage in terms of obviously what they buy for over compared to what we buy for. So we typically get a retail price and they get a supplier price. Right? So already, if you had to go out on a tender or a request for something, you're already out because your margins are very low. And if you've taken a lot of your money and invested that money into equipment, over time, you find yourself hitting a situation where you don't have enough cash flow to be able to sustain the business. So the idea, I think on our side is we've walked the chain. We've started as a services business, which is where I believe a lot of businesses should start. Create a product. Once you've created a product, outsource it to companies that will typically, be like ourselves. I'm not hunting my business. But hey, if you're looking for somebody, I'm here. But the advice is look at creating a product, look at getting into the market, look at doing whatever it takes for your product to be out there. In terms of manufacturing, there are companies that specialize with that, like ourselves, and there are many other companies. There are things that I can do, there are things that I can do that the next person can't do. That we are,
Even though you have the same machine, but the skill that you have probably they don't.
and also the time it takes to be able to manufacture some of these things. And we look at the margins. Is it worth me employing a tenor if I'm only using him once a month? Would I rather just go get a product from somebody else? So that's the idea. The idea is we are available to assist. We are available to say, let's collaborate, let's look at what one wants to produce. If it's something that we can do, then we can assist one another in that regard.
I think it's very good that you mentioned that. I've been seeing, it's a trend amongst ourselves, that we almost assume that having a good machine is having a good business. But as you're mentioning now, that collaborations are quite important. Before you buy a machine, the first thing you want to look at really is, does my product that I want, who around me can make it?
Sure.
There's this rush to be pioneers, in a sense, which people also don't realize that the pioneer pays the hardest price sometimes. I think there's more proof of your product making it in the market if someone else is doing it, more than if it has never been done before.
Sure.
Because we get to just study you and sit back and say, okay, let's see how many mistakes you're going to make. Let's see who's going to fight you. Then we come in. So I think that collaboration makes sense. Don't just buy a machine. Look around, who can I outsource from? Even if my profits go low, but the overheads are also cut out. So I come to you, I cut my metal, then you mold it for me. Then all I'm doing, maybe I do spray painting or powder coating, then I coat it, then I sell it until that can justify, my market can justify the need for me to buy a machine. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, and also I think in any business cash flow is king. And if you have to take $1 million and go and buy a plasma, you need to be able to have another $1 million to be able to buy the raw material that goes into producing the product.
exactly.
You need to have the cash flow to be able to advertise and get to the clients, right? So the reason as a business person, I would advise rather let, like you were saying, with a pioneer, he pays a lot of school fees. And what we are doing is we want to be industrialists, but we don't understand what it takes to be industrialist. That it takes, the payback period is long at times. And there's nothing wrong with doing it, provided that you understand that you're going to start a business today. You may not be able to break even for the next year or two. The question would be, would you have the funds or the necessary cash flow to be able to sustain the business while you're trying to establish yourself? So it's always good to just re-emphasize on what we're saying. Get the market. Once you've got the market, get the product, get someone employed. Once you're at a point where you think you've got enough to be able to justify you procuring your machines. So with my machines, you need real estate, you need the personnel to be able to run it. With some of the challenges that we have with load shedding, you would have a machine that you buy for R1 million, and for that to run throughout the day when there's load shedding, you need another 2 million. So it's always better to outsource until you get to a point where you understand the numbers.
That's very good. We have plenty clients right now who buy machines from China, $500,000 north of that, and they've been sitting with their machines for months. They didn't budget what was going to come in the operation of that machine. But beyond that, skill to operate and skill to maintain the machine are quite crucial, and that I think that's what we are hoping to tackle. Not just on this forum, but as we go forward as industrialists locally, to say, guys, let's look at aspects like this. Let's train more people. If we're not just training electricians and this mainline trades, but we also need to train people on machines like this that actually push industry. What would be your, maybe not to, if you're free to not mention it if it's something that might affect maybe your competition watch, but what is it that you want to make in terms of product or in terms of service? And once it's done, you look at it and say, you know what? We've done something here. And I know trailers are big and everything else, but I mean, what's that? It may not be one thing, but what is it that you look at and say, once Horizon Dynamics can do this?
Yeah, I think for us it's getting into the mining space, right? Because the mining space for me is big. I mean, it's a matter of life and death. What I'm seeing is that a lot of companies that are doing fabrication, the ones that are making the most in terms of turnover or making the biggest impact, companies that are able to take a drawing of sort and interpret it into a product. Right? So for us is that journey of saying, at the moment we are doing what we do based on the resources we have. But the ultimate goal, when it's all said and done, we want to be able to compete with companies that are big in the mining space. So without giving away a lot, what we are doing now is we are focusing mainly on compliance, because we understand what we need to do for the next year to be able to be at a point where we compete with those guys. Is we need to train our own people. If you don't train them, they stay. If you train them, they leave. As one big guy once said, if they leave, you just need to create a conducive environment for people to enjoy working in our company, which is what we strive for. But to answer your question, without giving you a long-winded answer, is we want to get to a point where we are able to produce products, fabricate products that are going to be used predominantly in mining industries. So we want to compete with the best. Unfortunately, we are starting on the back foot. There are people that have already had a 50-year it's the nature of the beast. But we are at a point where we understand we are fairly young. We are obsessed with the vision, and we are willing to put in the hours to be able to get there. So Africa is a big market for us. Because at the moment we're doing a lot of business in Africa. So we really started doing business in some African countries. And we say African countries because in South Africa, as if we're not Africans, But what we are saying is we have enough as Africans to trade amongst ourselves to produce products that will be consumed by Africans. And have that badge of honor to say that this was made by an African, manufactured by an African, and it's used by an African. So that's the ultimate vision.
I hear this story so many times. People say, ask me, do you want to start a company or a business? First thing they say is, I don't have capital. Now, I understand capitalism as financial capitalism. It's a massive part of starting a business. I tend to be the first one of thought that says that you don't need that influx of cash to start. I think it's more important for you to grow and less for you to start. So I'll give you a good example of how maybe I started. I just started with capital. I have any capital. I simply, the first thing I looked for was, who can I help? Right? And then I saw, okay, they need a. Then I went to people who can make the product. Then I put my skill to be able to talk to the person who's making the product, talk to my market. And then from there, I was able to create a product, even though I didn't have the machines to make sure of it. From there, then I said, okay, I've supplied one, that person trained me the next one, now I've supplied 2-3 people, and only from there was I like, okay, fine, this justifies, even if I'm now getting a loan to get money to, but the money I already made there was able to get me something small to be able to start. Sure. Now, in that regard, what is your advice to the average African? Let's start with the average South African who says, I want to get into the metal industry. I'm working now, I have a 9 to 5, but I have no idea what to start. I don't even have a 9 to 5. What do you think would be somewhat a general route which would be effective to start?
Yeah, so I think what you just said just further re-emphasizes or confirms what we initially touched on, right? So you don't need capital, you don't need massive amounts of machinery for you to be able to produce a product. You first develop a market, which in the age we're living in with social media platforms,
No excuse.
you can put yourself out there without having to incur a lot of costs. Back in the days, you need a salesperson to drive from one town to the next. Today, you can reach somebody who's in America without having to travel there. So there's a lot more that you can achieve with the load that you have. So my advice, and I come from the same school of thought as well, I don't believe in, I've often when we go in with buy machines, we are always told of a story of somebody who came with a government grant of 4 million in the bond machine, and this guy didn't know his left hand from his right hand. which is all good and well, right? We some people are just that like right? And my thing is there's nothing wrong with him, provided that when he gets the machines, we know what we then do with the machines. But the idea, like we've been saying, is start with a journey wherein you are saying people have already paid the school fees. People have already manufactured gates, burglar doors, a whole lot of all these products that are being consumed, right? And there's a need for a lot of us to be able to provide those services. I'll give you a typical example. If you're looking for a mechanic, 90% of the time, you'll be told that mechanics are not reliable rather. Right. So somebody will say, I'll give you a car on Friday, and then come Friday, he says, no, I didn't even, it was next Friday. So my thing is, be somebody that can be dependent on, start a business, create a customer base, and from that customer base, you then start outsourcing, be an agent. Right. When you start off. We all know at different levels. Yes. So once you master the skill, because there's a lot of things that you need to learn. Unfortunately, as Africans, we have parents who did what they did. There's no knowledge that's passed on from one generation to the next, as far as business is concerned. But where I see the benefit is that the humility that we have, the collaborations that we are able to strike up, for me is what gives us an edge over the next person. So start small. Do not worry about capital. Focus on what you can do with the loan that you have. Money doesn't grow on trees. Even if it grew on trees, it would be trees that take forever to produce the fruit. So my thing is, let's start small. Do what you can with the loan that you have. And when you get to a point where you are producing enough, you can take your books to the bank, and then the bank will be able to fund you. Even if I owned my own bank, I would not fund somebody with an idea. Because there's a lot more that goes into it. You can have a brilliant idea, but if you're not willing to put in the work, 100%. And if there's not demand for your product, then I'll just be throwing money into a tent.
It's so crucial. A lot of people make projects before they approach the market.
Sure.
Now they one of the project that costed them 10,000 to make. Now they go to the market and say, market, give me 10,000. Because I spent 10,000 to make this. And the market says, you never asked for a product. So I think, it's very important to talk to the market before you even do that.
And I've seen a lot of that. I mean, many years ago, I shared this with you. We ventured into like a diaper making business.
Yes.
I mean, if you had to look at what the market consumes today, it's millions and millions of diapers. For you to be able to make a dent in that market, you need about 25 million rands worth of equipment. It is as of 7 years ago, right? Otherwise, you just be selling to your neighbors. And I don't know if your neighbors can make enough kids to sustain your business.
Yeah.
So start with what you have, outsource as much as you can, with the idea that as I'm outsourcing, I'm going to be building enough capacity for me to be able to understand the business, be able to create the necessary relationships, be able to say to the people, I am able to produce, I can deliver on time, and this is the product that I'm able to produce. This is the quality of the product that we are able to produce. Because once you get to a point where you're starting to challenge big companies, there's a lot of things that can happen. There's litigation. It's just like issues upon issues. So start small, grow, understand the business, and eventually get what you need to get, which would then today, a lot of people say, I'm not able to start the business because of capital. And I don't want to just, look, in all honesty, you need money to be able to make money. Right. But it's always better to have money when you know and understand the business.
Then you put money into it, yeah.
So then you put money into it.
I think maybe we can conclude through these businesses. Currently, you talked about your materials, which is closed, which is closing. Now new Chinese imports coming in on the metal. We also talked about the human resource. You're looking at so many other aspects. What would be the challenges right now that you're facing that are not exactly something you can work on to solve? You can maybe make ways to, make plans to work around them, but what is it that you look at now that if someone who is in an influential space is watching this video can perhaps look at it and say, hey, this industrialist is making something I can tackle. For example, we can come to, for example, we want to start an institution to train machine operators and machine technicians, because we realize that it's almost a cliche now that everybody, if they can't find C11 PM, they go on Alibaba and they check machines. They see this machine which, if it's a German make, it's 1.3 million, but on Alibaba it's going for 230. And it's end of year, they got a bonus. And the wife also got a bonus. So they go, they spend 230,000, they buy a machine, it's in. Now all of a sudden they're stuck with a machine that costed them 230K and they don't know how to install it. once it's been installed, they don't know how to use it. I mean, we had a laser water that we bought recently.
Yeah,
Which is, you know, over 70-something thousand. That if we had sat down and said, okay, fine, let's look at the relevant, let's look at what products can we make with this. Let's also look at who has it. Let's just understand, is it something that is for a hobbyist or is it for an industrialist? So you have stuff like this, which, and I'm tackling the issue of expertise. Right? That's the challenge I feel is something that's really lacking in the market. We don't have enough skills. So ergo, we are starting this training facility where we can get to say, look, your kid just finished matric, whatever it is, come through, let them go through a year, even from 3 months, let them just get a course. Understand what a CNC machine does, a router, plasma, laser. What does it do? What does it entail? ABC. And to bring this to actual light, we had a panel on Friday where we had a couple of this guy wants to make agricultural equipment. So you know those furrowing discs, those forks, they are separate from the main engine. You attach them, you know, and you change them, you know, for hoeing, furrowing, all of that. There was a laser machine which was being sold. They wanted to cut up to 16 millimeters milestone to make those forks that you Now, they were about to spend up to 380,000. Oh, they had already spent up to 380,000. So the exhibitor, it was a Chinese exhibition, the exhibitor was there. And they were there fighting with the exhibitor, saying, listen, I spent 380,000 buying a laser cutter, which you said cut up to 16 millimeters milestone.
Sure.
If only you had also let me know. And also, keep in mind, they need oxygen to do this. They are overheads. They've spent more than 380,000 just on oxygen alone. So that they can cut. And they don't need precise cuts. They do agricultural equipment. You're applying the soil. The soil is not going to say, hey, you're 2 millimeters off. Now, and so their argument was, if someone had let me know that there is a plasma cutter, which cutting to the same capacity will cost me under 80,000. And I could assemble it here. So, and they would say, why didn't you also tell me that I have this option if I don't need my cut to be that precise? Why? And this is the education we're also saying. It's not just in the people who fix them, but it's that mindset to actually train people to actually, you know, understand what you're getting into in the industrial space of things. So for you, apart from, you know, I've mentioned one thing, maybe I hope I haven't taken you off a tangent, but look at it from the broader spectrum. What challenges is it that are there in the South African platform or the African platform now?
Okay, so I think we're not training people for what we need, right?
Okay.
So, like for instance, when you go through high school, everybody wants to go to university, right? Everybody wants to become an HR consultant or whatever they study at varsity, right? But the truth is that for you to become an HR manager, there has to be a company that exists that provides a certain service. So we need the manufacturer before the HR consultant, right? And our education system is structured such that those that are influential see that as a measure of success. So if you've studied and you've got a varsity degree, whether you've got the capacity to be able to put that into good use or not, you are seen as being, you know, better than the average guy.
Exactly.
Where on average, I think personally, a plumber, and I know a couple of plumbers that live in my neighborhood, that are making more money than a person who studied HR.
They have a master's in, their names, mega structures in financial.
And look, I'm not saying don't do it.
No.
We need people to keep the universities busy. However, I think the South African or the African economy or the market requires people who can work with their hands. And this is where I think the biggest gap is. If you look at panel beaters, if you look at electricians, if you look at plumbers, if you look at fitters and tenors, there's a huge scarcity of those. And those that have gone through the FET colleges that are there are not being given the opportunity to work on the real stuff. Most of the equipment that they train on is it doesn't speak to
Yeah.
what we see now. So I think for me the biggest challenge is one, the training institutions need to address the demand. So for you to be able to go and attend some sort of a training course or whatever, you need to be able to use that. I believe that if I were to go and study plumbing tomorrow, within a day or two after graduating, provided that I understand the market, I should be able to work. There's social media, there's Facebook, there's a lot more that you can do if you are able to work with your hands. And this is where I believe a lot of us need to be focusing on.
Okay.
So that's the one challenge. So the scarcity of skills. What we've done to try and mitigate against that risk is we train our own people. When you train people, you provide a conducive environment for them to work. You've got the HR person doing what they need to do, which is make sure that people adhere to some rules.
Yeah.
And that's how you build a company. But what I see as then a barrier once you get to a point where you've got all of that is access to markets, right?
Okay.
People have evergreen contracts. You've got a company that has been doing work with a certain company for time immemorial. There's a lot of compliance documents that one needs to have to be able to do to provide a certain service. And bureaucracy of sorts, which is fine because we need to live in a functional country with rules and all of that.
Yeah.
But I think the government may need to consider where we are and where we need to get to. But that's a conversation for a different time. My challenge, I think, for now is, in all honesty, the skills, is the fact that we are evolving quicker than we had anticipated. Right. So instead of working your typical 8-hour day, you now have to work until your body shuts down. So there's this notion, or there's this perception that people have that when you start a business, you're like your own guy. You should show up when you feel like showing up, and don't do it. It's a trap. If you are looking into getting into business for those reasons, then I can tell you now, a year or 2 years, those stats where they say a typical business in first 5 years, you're out. A lot of, I think this is just my personal opinion. It happens because people get into business without understanding what it takes to be able to keep the ship afloat. So training for me or skills is a big issue.
Okay.
Red tape from government in terms of all these things that they need. And I think access to markets.
Okay.
But when you have created a market, it makes it easier for you to be able to have enough cash flow to bring in the right skills in the company, complement that with people that you can train. And there's a lot of programs that are out there where government assists paying salaries, giving young entrants into the job market stipends.
Okay.
I just believe there's a lot that needs to be done around that. We need to train them for the right trade and make sure that they are used where the gaps are in the market.
Certain. No, that's great. This has been very informative. I think, look, we'll have more of these, but for today, would there be something else you'd want to maybe say that we didn't touch on in line with what you do, in line with the market before we close this?
Yeah, so I think first and first, thank you for having me. It's also been enlightening. So as I speak to you, there's a lot of things that are, but the most important thing for me is to the viewer out there, it's possible. Right, that with all these,
whether they're saying the economy is doing this, it's possible.
No, it's possible. It can be done in Africa by
anywhere
for Africans, for that matter. So I can only speak for Africans. It has to be for Americans. It's possible, it can be done. You just need to collaborate. You need to align yourself with the right people and just read and open yourself up to amassing as much knowledge as you can. Because for me, is the one who has the most information, is the one that has advantage. We live in an information age, right? So if you know what you are talking about, people are able to, even if they say you fake it until you make it. I'm not saying go out there and do it, but I'm saying just be informed. Once you are informed, you can ask the right questions. You can find yourself in the right circles where people are going to understand that this particular individual wants to learn and they can be helped, because the idea is each one teach one.
Yeah.
So you give me an opportunity, I then need to take that information and relay it to the next person. So as Africans, I don't think people understand where we are. We are, in my view, potentially living in. If you want to make things happen now, you are the best person in your whole family generation to be able to do it. So there are people like ourselves, there are people like NJ who are willing to just listen, try and assist where we can. But the message as I close is it's possible. You just need to work hard and you just need to understand what it is that you are getting into.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Mr. Boz. This was very informative. And for those of us, our viewers who are watching, I hope you, look, we're not trying to inspire you. Don't subscribe, we really don't care. The point here is this. We hope you actually learn that it's possible and you can do it, as he's mentioned. And it's not really about the big spaces that people used to need to start industry. Right now in your garage, you can get a machine which cuts wood. You can start making kitchens. You do not need billions or millions even for that. It's that notion that we used to have, that people stay away from participating in their own country's economy. And that's what we want to get out. And we want people to understand that you can participate in your own country's economy. Especially even here in Africa, we look up to the big guys to make it happen. They can, perhaps they will. But in the moment, while we're waiting, we can start doing our own manufacturing, start making our own things. By now, guys, it's I don't know why we don't have our own car. No, like it's go-karts, motorbikes. These are metal frames with an engine. So these are things we can start making for ourselves. And in this topic today, we're just talking about the metal industry, the metal industry and somewhat the other lines of industry. But hope you stay tuned and hope you've been motivated, right? We don't just want to make a living, we want to make a difference. So
Thank you.